Joining us, two representatives back at work again. Brad Sherman, the Democrat from California, thinks the automatic cut should be suspended. Representative Andy Harris, the Republican from Maryland, says it's the Democrats who need to come up with an alternative. Gentlemen, thank you both for joining us today. Representative Harris, what about that? You know, Representative Sherman is among those who feels that the sequesters should be suspended. They would be too onerous on the economy, cost too many jobs. What do you say?
Well, the House Republicans have twice put forth a plan that would delay the sequester with offsetting it with other cuts elsewhere in the budget. And we're still waiting for the president. By law, he was supposed to have submitted the budget today. He hasn't even said when he's going to submit a budget. How can we work together to solve the nation's economic problems if we don't even see a budget from the president or the Senate?
Well, what about that, Representative Sherman? Republicans say it's up to the president and the Democrats to come up with an alternative. Are you working on an alternative? What can you tell us?
Well, certainly we have alternatives. Whether they're alternatives that are likely to get a serious hearing with the House Republicans, I don't know. Congress is over 4 months late in passing the appropriations bills for the fiscal year that began last October 1st. The president will probably be a month late in providing a budget. We need to have non-ideological budgeting approaches. The business cycle puts us at different positions at different times, and we ought to have different policies at different points in the business cycle. If we get all tied up in ideology, then people will be for the same policies no matter what the situation. That works for ideology. It doesn't work for economics.
I know you're not the chief spokesman for the president, Representative Sherman, but why is the budget late, especially now as we're trying to get our arms around the deficit? We haven't had a passed budget in a few years out of Washington. Wouldn't now be the time to show, as Speaker Boehner said today, some presidential leadership and step up with a budget on time this time around?
Well, Boehner wants the leadership, but he doesn't want to be a follower. So the fact is that the sequester problem has much of Washington tied up in knots, and we really aren't so interested in a budget for 2014 as in trying to deal with 2013. So I think we've got to do first things first. Congress is over 4 months behind, and it's not surprising the administration would want to focus on the decisions that we haven't made yet.
No, but I mean, what's the answer to no budget in 4 years?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
I would say that the Senate rules are such that it is very difficult to get 50 senators to vote on anything in favor of anything.
But isn't that your job? Isn't that everyone's jobs?
I'm not a senator, and so no, that's not my job. But the Senate rules, and they've changed them just a little bit, and procedures and practices over there are such that it is very difficult to adopt a budget. Now, keep in mind, the president.
So who's accountable for that? Is there anyone actually taking responsibility for the fact that we haven't had a budget in 4 years? Who's accountable?
Look, for decades, the Senate has been able to pass a budget. Now, under the leadership of Harry Reid and President Obama, it's not able to pass a budget. It's not a problem with the Senate. It's not a problem getting 51 senators. They've done it for decades. The problem is that no one in Washington on the other side of the aisle wants to take leadership for how to get us out of the fiscal mess we're in. And not this year's fiscal mess, a fiscal mess that extends out 20, 30, 40 years. The president's budget last year never, ever, ever balanced. You can't do that. Those numbers don't add up.
Well, let's get back to this sequester here. It comes at a time when we just learned that fourth quarter GDP was horrible, compared to what we saw in the third quarter. The stock market seems to feel like things are getting back to normal, or the economy's on the mend. Is this the time, Representative Harris, to allow these spending cuts to take effect automatically that could take out a number? The New York Times says it could cost 1 million jobs in the economy right now. Isn't this the time to think about an alternative of some kind?
Absolutely. The House has passed an alternative twice. The Senate has not taken it up.
The House is the majority.
The House alternative would cost the same million jobs. Whether you've got defense or whether you got domestic programs, it's the same reduction in GDP, the same reduction in expenditures. You can argue about what the federal government should be spending money on, but if you dramatically reduce expenditures at a time of national recession, and I think we're still in a recession, then you're going to see a decline in jobs. It is not an answer to say that the House has passed something that they know is absolutely dead on arrival in the Senate.
So maybe the debt doesn't matter then right now. Is the debt not a priority then right now? Is growth more of a priority than actually reining in the debt? Is that what you're saying?
I don't think they're mutually exclusive. conservative. You know, the fact of the matter is government growth is not going to get us out of this economic mess. Private sector growth is. And right now, government debt is a drag on the private sector. The threat, look, the president threatens every day to raise one tax or another. The Senate leadership does. The House Democrat leadership threatens new taxes. As long as the threat of new taxes, huge regulations from the EPA hang over the private sector, we're not going to get the growth that we need.
But you know that one of the biggest drags on fourth quarter GDP, that report showed, was the reining in of defense spending as we got out of Afghanistan and retracted some of the troops at that point in the fourth quarter. That is what was a huge contributor to that decline that we saw in growth in the fourth quarter. So now are we going to do this all over again with the sequestration here?
Sequestration is already affecting government expenditures as agencies try to guess what position they'll be in, and of course they're being conservative. The deficit problem is the problem for later in this decade. The jobs problem is the problem today, and this talk of a contractionary fiscal position, because it sounds good ideologically, is really harming the economy.
Representative Harris?
Look, in the end, we've got to get our debt and our deficit under control while we grow the private sector economy. We can't do it through new EPA regulations. We can't do it through new taxation. You can't tax your way out of this mess. And that's the problem. The president has decided that's the approach he's going to take. The Republicans in the House have a different approach. We believe that we have to rein in entitlement spending. We have to go after sectors of the budget that are up until now, again, across the aisle and on the other side of the Capitol in the Senate, they're unwilling to handle.
Very good.
We'll let
you both get back to work. Thanks for joining us.
Appreciate your time. Thanks very much, guys. Isn't it nice to know in 2 weeks you haven't missed anything?
This all sounds very familiar.
Right back.